we've had negative 17.5 negative growth. Actually, that's 6 years, but we're supposed to have like 4% a year. So really, we can have nearly 40% negative growth because we didn't get the 24%, and then we had negative 17 on top of it.
Okay. So to me, would it be fair to say that that's a moderate estimate then?
Mr. Chow, if I may, Lauren, what happens is, I mean, those are moderate estimates based on how other districts are scheduling things. As you know, it's a 2% typical growth under Prop 13. We can't really predict what's exactly going to happen over time. This is
and if we did, we would be in the Bahamas.
Right. This is a modest expectation, but the answer to the question is that if the growth doesn't occur at that level, then bonds have to be issued in a smaller principal amount, or they have to be delayed. That's the only consequence. It's not as though the 4% is being counted upon. This is just an estimate for projection for information purposes.
And the proposed, this is my second question. I'm sorry if I know the chair is being indulgent with my questions. The second question I have is about the waiver, is that I just want to clarify what we're exactly going to be asking the voters and the State Board of Education. So we're going to be asking for a 5% bonding capacity waiver through 2025, and that's just not, that's not exclusive to Measure H, right?
That's
that
correct.
includes the previous 4 measures, is that right?
Yes, it does. So the effect of that would be to have all of those waivers of bonding capacity end on December 31 of 2025, and they would all be at the same level of 5%. Because at present, the bonding capacity waiver keeps the district from accessing the authorizations it's already obtained from the voters, as does the $60 per 100,000 limit.
Well, there must have been a reason.
There's some remaining capacity, yes. The $211 million, but we understand that's not sufficient to complete the projects that are on the program.
I understand. The immediate question that pops in my mind is that why wasn't this date asked for in the first place? If 2025 is the magic number for that we're going to be asking for.
Yeah. Those waivers were submitted quite a while ago,
okay.
Some years ago, and unfortunately the assessed valuation did not climb at the levels that were hoped for. I think that's correct, isn't it?
Thank you.
Maureen Thoms, and again, I also have a concern about the 4% projected growth. We've had negative growth and flat growth over the last 6 years, and I think you need to be looking at a more conservative number, maybe matching that of what Prop 13 limits are for growth. Another comment, there was a member of the public that did not have this. If you have extra copies, I'd like to make sure they get it, because that is a requirement of the Brown Act, that anything that we're discussing has to be available to members of the public. And then my last comment is that I would prefer in the future that we get emailed PDFs of this information when we get the agenda. I work in the county, and we have something called the Better Government Ordinance, where staff is not able to present anything to us, drop it on, we can't drop anything on any of our committee members' vias the day of the meeting. They have to have it 96 hours in advance. I know it's not a requirement of the district, but it would be a good practice it'd be a good goal for us. Thank you. And also I'd be interested in, if this group wants to form a subcommittee, I'd be interested in that.
Madam Chair, can I just respond to that briefly? We'll make that electronic copy available to the district and can provide. We also brought hard copies, but maybe there weren't enough.
Orlando Swartz. I'm coming at this from the chairman of the audit committee. This history of 2.5% as your entry level, and then the waiver as your flex level to offset any shortfall. It appears that this is rather deliberately used. You may have started out at 2.5, but actually, based on property valuation, you always end up at this 5%. And one of the things that with the new auditor coming in, I want to know in his history of this 2.5%, why you automatically look at the 5% as the bailout, because you've got 211 million. I guess it's driving me to my point of, is scope adequate at 2.5%? Or if you budget for 2.5%, you would not have this problem, because you're budgeting for what you actually can assess and spend, as opposed to alternate choice of looking at 5% as your bailout when you don't have it. So that's why I'm wondering, that's why I asked the question earlier, why the elementaries weren't done first, the middle second, and the high schools last, because then you have the ability to stay within your parameters. And to me, this is an ideal question for the audit committee and the new auditors that are coming in, is to look historically why you cannot stay at 2.5% and still achieve your goal and only use the waiver. Because what I learned down south was the voters, and I think the citizens are telling you, you got fatigue that you're dealing with right now. And this fatigue is starting to have a groundswell, and the CBOC has a fiduciary responsibility to have due diligence as to the historical nature of your actions that land us where we are today. And Mr. Child's comments are very relative in terms of it. I look at it in terms of history. You start out at 2.5, but you end at 5. You always want to go to 5. I think the district's problem is in scope versus budget. And I think the citizens are going to demand why that spurious comment was made, and can it be validated historically with what you're presenting.
Thank you. Question for the presenters as well as for the staff. Why was this sent now? Why was this presentation left for the last minute? Because we could have been talking about this for several months. This is not something that the district just suddenly decided they were going to do. And I've been a part of this committee when a waiver application was submitted in the past. And we were given choices, and we were given a presentation, and we were allowed to voice objections. Because the application that goes to the state clearly says, advisory committee was consulted on such and such a date, and that advisory committee is the Citizens Bond Oversight Committee, and what objections were raised. The one I'm looking at, which is dated 2011, says none. Well, I happen to know that I was part of that committee and that there were objections. So it's interesting that they're not showing us on the application. And so, you know, I think this committee absolutely is going to have to look at this in much more depth. And we will not agree that this meeting and this presentation is giving you authorization, or that we're saying yay to your application. That is absolutely beyond belief that you would even put that in there, because this is not the forum for giving us no choice. Basically, you're saying, here we are, here's a presentation, and this completes our objective. No, the objective of this committee is to do the right thing for the community, for the taxpayer, and for the people who are paying the bills. And we cannot, in good conscience, say we don't know what it is that you're trying to sell us, but we're not buying it. We're absolutely not buying it. And we should have been told about this so much sooner. Because according to the deadline that you have, this is going to go before public hearing. And that is if and only if Measure H should pass. And that public hearing is in June. Our next meeting is in June. And you need to have some sort of resolution in June. The timing doesn't work. If this was stuck into the agenda so quickly without any advance warning to this committee, which I'm seriously furious about, and then we are told that just by coming here and making the presentation, this qualifies, I think this is a lot of BS, to be